All right, so we're going to put together the Grenadier drawer system today. So one of the things, if you've got the factory tie downs, those have to come out because our brackets are going to go over that. We do have our tie down rail that comes with the drawer system that you can put on. It'll stick up between the side of the drawer and the leveling kit. So what you want to do is start with a T47. This is the only time I recommend using an impact driver if you've got it, or just a regular socket. And all you're going to do is you're just going to remove the channel with the D-rings and clean it up and get it ready to go, be available for the drawer system to go straight in. So when you get your drawer system, it's gonna come in two boxes. The first big box is actually the tray with the slides in it. So this is the pull-out tray. These are the side frames, inner walls. The slides are already attached to the main frames. You've got your full-size handle, which we'll show you later that when you're installing it, if you have anything mounted to your tailgate, like a trail table or something like that, depending on the thickness of that table or what you have mounted there, you may have to leave this off. So, which is okay because the paddle latches act as a handle also. You've got a spacer plate, which we'll show you when you put on the faceplate, your two tie-down rails, your leveling panels, we call it the leveling kit, and all the hardware that will go together to build your drawer system. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the slides out. When you see the handle, the yellow goes towards the tailgate end, and this is going to go on just like this. And you'll notice that we mark the corresponding mount holes with the corresponding nut certs that are in your tray. So you'll see that these all line up with this. So all you're going to do is you're going to extend it, and I'll show you how to do that. You're going to grab an Allen wrench, and from these stainless screws, an easy way to do this is look for your first hole, put the screw through it just like this, and line it up with, I'll get this. If you got an extra helper to use to put a hand on that, that's great. And all we're gonna do is start this one, get a couple of threads on it. You wanna leave it loose so we can line up the other holes. So what you're going to do is you're going to see where you've got the corresponding hole to come up. Lift this up. This is where you might have to, they're floating nut plates, so it is a little bit adjustable. Got that one started. And then what you might have to do is slide this. Let me put this in a little bit tighter so my camera can move over. So when you get down here, you may have to open this up, push this down so you can move the slide in and out till you get to where the hole is. So this one, let me feel for it. Oh, is right here where we've got a divider. So you're going to take your screw and you'll see that's where the hole is. So we're going to put that one in, grab my T-square or my T-handle and start that hole, and you'll see that the back one is also adjustable. So you just want to move your slide in and out till you get it to where it lines up and get that started. So I'm going to stand up so I've got better access to this, and I'm going to tighten that up. So I'm going to tighten the other 3 up first because those are a regular round hole instead of a vertical slot. That I don't want this to adjust up and down. I want these 3 to make it all level. So we're going to tighten those 3 up all the way. And if you find that the screws go in a little bit difficult, you might have to take a little razor blade. Sometimes the powder coat gets on the threads. In the threaded holes. And you might just have to clean that out just a little bit. So that slides all the way in. All right, so one thing is when you get the side on, if you're working on a table, it's easier to flip the table around or stay on the other side. We're gonna grab the other main frame. Again, you're gonna see we've got the holes marked for the corresponding nut certs. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set this down. I'm gonna show you how to do it if it's just one of you. So an easy way to do it is fully extend the slide. Set it on the floor. Come through your hole that's marked. And set it with one hand. All you want to do is just get it started. Couple of threads so it holds just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just lift this up. And we're going to put in the third hole. See if I can do this left-handed. Again, it is always easier if you got a helper, but if you need to do it one-handed, it's all about getting it. There we go. Helps if the table's not push the table so it actually helps hold the slide. I'll come at it from this angle. Push it in as you're starting it. Again, sometimes it's a little difficult. I'm going to move it, take the weight off of it a little bit more. There we go. Got that one started. We'll come back to the second one. There it is. And then again, you're going to have to adjust this to get it to slide. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to tighten up the 2 front ones so we get it level. Do the rear, get that all the way in, and adjust for the third. Tighten that all the way up. So now your drawer's put together, and this makes it easier to slide in as one unit. Okay, so with your drawer system on the table, what we're going to do is we're going to put on the sidewalls for the drawer assembly. So your drawer top pieces come out of the other box that you get. So you'll notice that this tab, this bent tab, that's going to be the front side going with your push tab. So that's going to be right here on this side. So what we're going to do is, I like to put the bolts in from the outside going in. It does make it a little bit more difficult to put the nuts and the washers on. Get the nut started. Again, you can spin the bolt to help start it. And that'll sit up like that. And it's easier on the back one to be able to get your wrench in to turn it this way. And again, you'll get, you know, quarter turn. It's a little bit cumbersome, but you know, the best thing about it is nobody has access to it. So you're gonna tighten up all 3 of these for right now, because we're gonna put a bracket on the front side. So we're gonna do these 3 bolts on each sidewall. All right, so now with this being on a table, we want to put on the rear side brackets that have a large nut cert on them. This is where your leveling panel hold down knobs are gonna go. So there's 2 different ones. You'll notice that if they're bent the same way, one's got the nut sitting one way versus the other. So what you want to do is the one on the passenger side, which will be the right side of the drawer, because this is the tailgate end. You want this one to have the nut towards the front, and it's all the way out to here. This is going to go with a carriage bolt in through this rear hole that we left open. So all we're going to do is take a carriage bolt and stick it in through here, and then put a nut and washer on it to hold that in place. Try and stay out of the way so it's easier for you to see how this is going in. But you're gonna reach down, hold it with your finger, pair of needle nose vice grips or your hand or your pliers just to get this in. With it loose, you can also spin the head of the bolt to start the threads. That helps. So what you're going to do is you want to start tightening this. You can feel it right there. It's a little snug. I can still push it in and out just a little bit. I may have to loosen it when I get there, but that's okay. So we're going to move over to this side and do the same thing. It's going to come over, and again, when you put this on the bracket like this, you see that this sits further towards the front, and that's what we want. So I'm going to take this, put the bolt through, put it through that hole, and then reach in, drop the washer in place, and then get the nut on. And again, I'm going to spin the bolt to get it started. First time we did this all inside the vehicle, thinking that was the easiest way. Found out it's not. It's easier to do on the table. So it's a little bit movable. That's exactly how we want to do it. So really, this is the bulk of the drawer is put together. If you want to adjust your dividers, you can do that. Obviously, do that before you put on the sidewalls. Makes it easier because the screws come in from the side, so you can adjust it. We've got some underneath carriage bolt holes in a couple of positions, so if you use the middle for one of your dividers, you can actually disconnect these bolts and set them to go exactly where you want your divider, just for added strength. That's the only reason why they're there. Remember, this is 250-pound heavy-duty slides on both sides, so holds 250 to 500 pounds easily inside this drawer system. So with this in place, this will be easier to set in place, and then we'll put on our faceplate. Our handle, we'll show you how the handle goes on if you don't have a tailgate table on, because it will come up tight up against this and it'll be hard to close with this in the way. So you can leave that off at that point. But the next step is just slide it right into place. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're just going to slide this entire system up into place, and it fits perfectly inside the cutout of the rubber floor. So it'll sit in place just like that. So you're going to grab these 4 large bolts, large washers, and what we're going to do is I'm going to get inside the vehicle because it's easy to do the 2 front ones first with the drawer slightly opened. Okay, so when you're in place, you'll notice that the factory hole, you can see it down through the hole. We're tight against the forward indentation of the factory rubber mat. We're going to take the bolt that we supply you, the large bolts, and we're just going to put this in place, and we're going to start it and get it a little bit hand tight just so it's there, and it'll hold that into place. This is a 13mm head bolt, so I'm just going to lean over this other side and do the exact same thing with dropping the bolt into place just like that and starting to thread that. I may have to move a little bit. I gotta see where I'm at.
Blinded me.
Blinded the camera. Take your time getting these lined up.
Need to shift.
So let me see if I can put the light down and just start turning this. So that way when it starts, if you have to, you can grab your wrench and tighten that up. But get it to where it's about 90% done, and then we're going to move back to the back side and put those bolts in. Okay, so when you're done starting the front bolts, you're going to come to the back, extend the tray all the way out, and then drop the 2 bolts as I blind myself into the back, and you'll start you'll start threading these bolts in. Again, this is a 13mm socket. So that one started. I'm going to move over to the other. I'm doing it from the inside just because it's easier for the video, and if you got long arms, you can reach in past the doors that don't open all the way to drop that into place. You can see the threads right there. So you may have to adjust. This is why you don't tighten all the way up. You may have to adjust this side to side just a little bit to get that started, and then you'll be able to thread that on.
All right, go ahead.
So I'm still sitting inside the vehicle. We're going to show you how to put the forward leveling panel on, and at the same time with the tie down rail. Now, if you want to leave the tie down rail off, you can. This will sit up about 1 inch above the leveling panel and the top panel, but this gives you the tie down capability from front to back. So these go into the same holes at the top of your wall. So what you want to do is you want to take your little stainless screw, find the top hole that you're going to come into is right about here. You see how that comes through right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the tie down, set it into place with its forward hole right there, and you can let this drop down so we can set this leveling panel in place to go with that, to match up with that screw mount. So gonna have to push that in a little bit and see how that starts just like that. And then we're gonna come back to the next hole, which is right about here from underneath on the sidewall. And we're gonna lift the tie down rail up and get that all matched up. So that's now through there, and then into the leveling panel. And you can go ahead and tighten this all the way up, both screws. So now you got your leveling plate in place. You see that you've got enough room to open your power point up. And then what we're gonna do is now grab the rear panel, and we're gonna set the rear panel in place, not the top panel, because it will actually go in these two slotted holes with a large hinge, but we're gonna grab this panel and a short 90-degree bracket that will sit here as a brace for that panel. All right, so now with this in place, this is your tie down rail. Again, you can leave these off if you want. You're gonna grab this long bracket right here that's got two nutserts in it. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna install this. Let me get this first hole. The next hole lined up with your tie down panel. Sorry, we tightened everything up. Get the screw through it, and you're gonna take this panel and you're gonna set it in place so we use the two nutserts as the mounting point for this plate, because this is gonna hold the folding top panel on the leveling plate in position until you need access to this panel right here that you can still pull off and still gain access to the side. So we're gonna put the other screw through, line it up, and once it starts, you can go ahead and tighten this all the way up. So now we're gonna grab the long leveling panel. It's gonna go on just like this and fit this shape of the cutout that's different on the passenger side than the driver's side. We're also going to put the tie down rail in. So we're gonna start with the rear screw, find that hole, put the screw in, set your tie down panel in it, or over the screw, just like that. I'm gonna use my T-handle to hold that. And then we're gonna set this into place. And start that. Doesn't take much. And we're gonna move to the middle hole can feel that underneath. You have to lift the tie down up so that hole lines up for that screw to go right through. Once it does, you'll feel it fall into place. And you can tighten that all the way up and then come back and do the back one. I got one more. Now, right here, so we'll do the same thing. Stick that screw into place. So now you got your leveling panel in place on both left and right side, and now all we have to do is put the hinge in place. So we'll work on that next. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put these large hinges in. They go right here. We're going to turn it upside down. If you want, you can always install this on this panel before you put it on. It's up to you. I'm just showing you how it all goes together inside the vehicle. So this is a 10 millimeter socket, and you're going to put the nuts and the washers on. Do the underside first. And you can tighten those up. Try and keep it from moving. You want to keep this, push the hinge towards the front of the vehicle so it's perfectly level and front to back, side to side, square on the panel. And these are just snug, hand tight. These are nylock nuts. You don't have to torque them. You don't have to go so tight that you spin, you break a post off. You don't want to do that. So again, I'm doing this upside down so it's easier for you to see it. As you start tightening it up, it'll want to move on you. So put 2 fingers on it, hold it snug. Get that one snug. Move over to the other. And again, just so where you're snug, okay? So with that like that, this is nice and tight. We're going to take the shorter of the 2 panels, and that's going to go on just like this. So you can put these other nuts and washers on, and once you start tightening it up, we'll stand it up so you'll see how it's going to go. So I'm going to get this pretty snug and see what I have to adjust when it's folded in place. So you'll notice that that'll come over just like this and sit on this panel, and that's where you put a spin knob that holds this in place. So we want this to be level. You're going to have about an 1/8 of an inch gap right here. So what we want to do is we want to pull that up, kind of hold that vertical. You can feel it hit the edge of the slotted holes. So we're going to use that as our test point. So this is pushed down so it's fall right into place. You've got about a 1/8 of an inch gap. It's yeah, pretty close. And what we have to do is, this is where we adjust this bracket by pushing it in just a little, so this will come down more and line up with the hole. So we'll leave that till we're outside the vehicle. So I'm going to move over to this side, And I'm going to do the same thing. Move our light over. So we're going to set this in place, hold it snug, put washers and nuts on the underside. See how I got those started? And I'm going to push this towards the back of the vehicle as I tighten these up. And that'll help me keep it nice and square. Now, if you have the side panel, you don't have the inverter, the factory inverter, your outlet plug sits higher on the sidewall than what it does with the inverter. So we slotted this panel specifically to fit the inverter plug since it's so low. But all these panels work with if you've got the inverter or if you don't have the inverter. It doesn't matter. If you've got a ratcheting dog bone wrench, 10 millimeter, that sometimes is easier. When you're trying to hold this square and tighten it up. So try this with getting my finger underneath to hold the ratchet. It's easier to do on the passenger or on the driver's side because of the gap in the panel. Again, you're just going snug and tight, so you're not going to put too much pressure on the post that you're tightening up. These are aluminum hinges with pressed in studs. Okay, so that's on. Now we're going to take the larger of the two panels, and it's going to go in just like this. We're going to do the same thing. 2 nuts, 2 washers. Get them started. And we're going to hold it vertical while we tighten it. And again, snug with that. Pull the light out. This will drop into place. We'll adjust that bracket down there. But you'll notice that if you need to pull this panel, what you do is you undo the spin knob, lift this panel up, and you can pop this sidewall off and still gain access to what you need to underneath. So I'm going to move to the outside of the vehicle so we can put the rest of the stuff together. Okay, so now what we want to do is, let's start with the driver's side. We want to make sure this is perfectly set. So you can see how this is loose and at an angle. So we want to just kind of tighten this bracket up. So come in here, hold it firm as you tighten it up. Again, just hand tight. So this just drops right into place. Okay, so we want to adjust this bracket. You also want to make sure that there's not any powder coat in that first thread. So you can actually take scissors or a little razor blade and just make sure that that's nice and clean. Sometimes these get past us where we forget to do it. So double check it is good. So that way when you pull the panel down, you can actually line that up and spin this billet knob in place. And this will hold your access panel to the underside storage area nice and solid. So we're going to do that on the other side right now. Hitting the bracket right now so it's not coming all the way down. So we want to loosen this up just a little bit. And we want to push it back, push it towards the front. So this comes down nice and flat. We'll see about moving it just a little more right up to the bump stop on it. Make sure it's vertical. So when you tighten it up, make sure it's perfectly straight along the back edge. Again, we're going to take a set of scissors and just make sure our powder coat is nice and clear from the threads. We'll pop this back down into place. Spin that knob and that's nice and set. Now when you get adjusting, if you need to drop it down a little bit, you can always do that with a slight adjustment in the bracket. But you can see that these are nice and snug along with the side panels, and then when we put the top panels on, we'll be good to go. So now the next thing is we're going to work on the faceplate. So I'm going to open this up. So here's your parts for the faceplate. We're going to actually show putting the paddle latches on. Well, we'll be able to put the paddle latches on here. It'll be easier to show it this way. But we'll just set this up into place. This is your rear handle that will go on the outside. In between the faceplate and the tray is we have this spacer. This is just in case down the road making front to back dividers. This can go in. It's held in a couple of places, and front to back dividers, the screw head fits perfectly in here and doesn't cause the faceplate to bow out. So the faceplate would go on the outside of this, and then your handle would go right here. But because this vehicle has the pull out or the drop down tailgate table, that makes it extremely tight to put the handle on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab the hardware and we're going to start putting this together. So now to put your faceplate on, we're going to take our carriage bolts, our 7/16. We're going to push that through. We're going to take the spacer, and you'll notice that it's got a 1/4 inch hole. That's for the carriage bolt. And that's going to go right into that first slot. So that way, when it's on, it's a little bit hard. Hold the drawer out, the panel out. You're going to want to put a nut and washer on the backside. So we're going to put a nut and washer, and we're just going to get that started so we can move down the line, putting the other 4 into place. So it is easier to come and do end to end first. So you'll see how the bolt sticks through. It's enough for the washer and the nut to go on. And then we're going to push the other 2 in also. Again, if you're putting the crossbar on, you'll put the crossbar on now and then put the bolts through. So we're going to pop these both into place because we're going to be too tight with that table on. All right, so now you're going to grab the paddle latches. When you get these bolts in, get them about 90% tight because we may have to adjust top to bottom. And what you're going to do is, this is a 10 millimeter socket. So we're going to take this bolt off. And you're going to have a couple of extra washers that we're going to put in with this when we put it back together. So what you're going to do is you're going to open it up, make sure it's unlocked. You're going to set it into place, and you're going to put 2 washers, because what we found is they don't give you washers to go in a gap here between the hold down plate and the bolt. So what I want to do here is, let's see if we can adjust this down just so it holds it itself for right now. So I can take this with the bolt, and you're going to take those extra washers and you're going to put them right here, because this thing will crush down and we want it to not push too hard. So we're going to add those back in, and then we're going to tighten that all the way up, because we're going to adjust the paddle latch to be tight. So go ahead and tighten that all the way down. Sorry for the noise. Slippery wrenches. So what you're going to see here is, this is where we're going to have an adjustment. So we want to have about a 1/4 of an inch gap to start, because when it slides in on the faceplate on the sidewall, these guys, we want that paddle latch to come in behind that nice and tight. So take it to where you got about a 1/4 inch gap to start, open that up, and then move over and do the other paddle latch. So again, we're going to open this up, take this off, pop this guy off right here. Then I'm going to turn so it's easier to get the camera on the other side. So what you're going to do is you're going to set the paddle latch in place, nice and snug, and we want it to go in, and you can turn the bolt just to hold it so where it's snug, so that I can take this bolt, put it back through, grab a couple extra washers, and put that into place, and tighten the paddle latch up completely, all the way nice and snug. And then, again, we want to make sure that we have about a 1/4 of an inch to adjust from the inside. So take the little set nut and loosen that up so you can spin it all the way in. Okay, so the next step is, you've got this magnet, and then you've also got this little piece of foam. What we're going to do is we're going to cut this in half, the magnet. And the magnet we use as a little backing plate on the back side of this, so when this bolt on the paddle latch comes in, it's not on the metal and the powder coat. It's on the dense magnet. So you're going to peel and stick that into place on both sides. Peel it. Reach in on the back side, stick that into place. And then what we also like to do is, just so you don't have metal on metal, is if you go ahead and cut this in half and cut it to size, we like to just put a little piece of foam right here so it takes away any clank when you push the drawer in, and if you have to slam it closed, which is okay because you got heavy duty slides, you're just going to peel and stick this, if I can get my hand on it properly. Peel that and stick that right there. So nice and snug. You grab a piece real quick, cut this to size. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, you know, just a little protection piece for when you close the drawer. So you get that into place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the paddle latches to make sure we're correct. So when this goes in, make sure it's both locks are up. You may have to lift the yellow lever up to lock it into place. But when you do this, if you feel that that paddle latch is nice and snug like that, what you want to do is spin that and feel that it's in there nice and tight. So that one's nice and tight on that side. This one, we can latch it and we can feel that it's nice and tight in here also. So open it back up, pull it out, and all you're going to do is you're going to make sure that the inner nut is nice and tight. That will hold your distance. And you do that on both sides. So hold that, spin that tight, so we're good. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to take the forward top panel, and that's got the longer drop edge here. And while we're out, we'll show you that in between the two top panels are these slotted holes, so you can actually put carriage bolts in it to make this snug, holding the two tops in place. So if you're going to be sleeping back there, putting a lot of weight back there, your two top panels are going to be nice and snug. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this like this. We're going to reach in and we're going to drop this into place in the slotted holes. You notice that you've got a little bit of movement front to back. That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take two spin knobs, two washers, and we're going to do the two middle locations only. So we're going to set this in place. You're going to reach in and you'll feel it. You're going to spin that knob into place, and not necessarily snug, but in there to where it's just kind of holding it from moving much, because we want to set the rear panel in place and make sure it matches up with the faceplate first. Okay, so it's in there. I can still move it a little bit, but I'm good. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you have the slotted holes going in towards the middle. So this is going to drop into place. Pull this out just a little bit. So the way that we want this is we want to see how the faceplate goes, because we're going to put an edge seal under this, so when it's pushed down weight, it's sitting on the faceplate. So if you see, we've got a gap here and no gap on this end. So that means I just have to loosen these bolts to adjust that. So I'll grab my 7/16 socket again. And I'm just going to loosen this up and let that drop down. I felt it drop as soon as I got there. So you'll see that I've got about a 1/4 inch gap, and that's right where I want to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the edge seal which is in this bag right here. It's got metal in it, so it keeps it nice and snug, is we are going to push this up into place at the very edge and go all the way across the drawer top. It's a little bit snug at first because, again, it's got metal on the inside that helps hold the shape and keeps this rigid and holding onto the metal. So when you pull the drawer in and out, it's not going to pop off. And you'll see that we have to cut some on the end. That's okay. That's the plan. So we got to look at see. You're pretty close. Only have to cut just a little bit. So I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch off. You'll notice that that metal right there is you're going to want to pop any piece that's on that very edge off. And you can throw that away. So I'm going to push this in my bag, throw that on the table, and get this all the way in here on there. So now I'm slowly going to close the drawer again, and this slides under perfectly. So with that in place, you can double check your paddle latches. It's nice and snug. Open them up, and what we're going to do is now we're going to tighten this panel up. So one other thing that we put in here is because we don't weld these corners, you might get a little bit of movement on the drawer when it's really heavy, filled up. So what we do is we make these just little L brackets, and you can add those in, and what they'll do is they will go right here in these 2 spots. So you can pull up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten my 2 middle bolts up so my faceplate doesn't move. I'm going to go all the way tight with that and this one, and we're going to put this L bracket on the inside corner, carriage bolt, and then add another carriage bolt right here on that slot. So you'll see that this goes on right there. And this is where you make sure that when you're putting your carriage bolts in, that you've got the 1 inch long carriage bolts that go with your handle and fits with these L brackets. So I'm going to pop that out, and I can push the bolt back through. It's my longer guy. Slide this over, and I want to put this nut and washer back on, and I'm going to grab a carriage bolt for right here on that slot to hold. So I'm going to go in with it, push the bracket, get her to line up just like that. And tighten up my corner. And this just adds a little bit more rigidity to your corner. Tight with that, and then I'll go tight with the carriage bolt right here. Now we'll move over and we'll do the other L bracket. This bolt back out, just so we can stick that bracket into place. Put the bolt in. Slide the bracket over. Take the nut and washer, put this back on. loosen. Have that snug. Push the bracket back up into place. Might be a little snug when you're pushing it in. Spinning the bolt if the hole is slightly off makes that easy. You can see that it's going in, looks like it's going in crooked. That's okay. That'll snug up as we tighten the bolt up. And it will come into place as the carriage bolt will grab the slotted hole. So let me grab a nut and a washer. Sorry, my arm's in the way. So we want to, I'll try and do this upside down so you can see that carriage bolt starts sliding. So what we want to do is, as we start tightening it up, put some pressure on the bolt to where it grabs that slotted hole. And once it does, it'll line up with that carriage bolt to pull it all the way in snug. And then we're going to tighten this bolt all the way up. So now it's snug on the faceplate from side to side, and you don't get any movement on that faceplate. So now we're going to slide it back into place. Remember, these are lock-in, lock-out slides, so you have to release them. So we go under perfectly, sliding in perfect, just like that. Okay, so now that you've got the faceplate, everything fits, pull that rear panel back off. This was held in place by these being snug. So tighten them all the way down so it holds all the way down. Go. Okay, so snug down the two middle ones, reach in. It's easy to hold like this, and you're gonna reach in. The dividers aren't too tall to where they're in the way, but you'll reach in and you'll feel spinning that knob in place and go all the way tight with it. Hand tight. And then you're going to do the other side the same way. You're going to reach in, find that post, push the washer up, and put the spin knob on. So once that's done, we're going to put the top panel back on, the rear top panel, and we're going to put the corresponding spin knobs on for it. So do the two rear, make sure you're pushing it against there. Grab my other spin knobs and washers. So you have to slide the drawer in a little bit so you can get your arm in past wherever you got your divider set. So that's in snug. Then I'm going to do the two rear ones. And again, the next step is going to be putting the 3 carriage bolts in, and your drawer is 100% put together. The only thing still required is the top marine deck mats for non-slip of anything that you put on top. So that's on snug, front and back snug. Now we can reach in and put these 3 bolts in. You can do it by reaching in like this with 2 hands, one hand to hold the bolt. You want to put the bolt head in the front, coming back towards you. So I'm going to grab 3 bolts, 3 washers, and 3 nuts. and my 7/16 socket. And I'm going to reach in. I'm going to feel where that slot is. And I'm going to push the bolt. I don't know if you can see in here. It's going to be tight. Just to see where that bolt is. And you're going to put a washer and a nut. I'll get my hands out of here in just a second once I get it started so you can see it. Spin the nut until you get it to start getting into the plastic nylock. And then we're going to do the same thing in the middle by reaching in. Put the bolt through. Even me with T-Rex arms can put this together. I like getting all 3 bolts in place before you tighten down. So what that does is, if you push on here, you see a little bit of movement between the 2 top panels. This is going to snug that up to where you have 0 movement as a top panel for the drawer. So I'm gonna move around this way. Got to switch hands, move away. So I can get my hand in there. Okay, so once I start that, I'm going to grab my 7/16 and I'm just going to tighten them all the way up. And I'm going to go from side to side. And you also notice on top, there's no separation of the 2 top panels anymore. So, with that done, all I'm going to do is close it, make sure these move, lock up, lock like that, and I can key lock the paddle latches, and now your drawer is completely put together. All we have to do now is just put the marine deck mats on it and give it that really cool finished look. Okay, so now that your drawer's completely put together, we're going to put the marine deck mats on. So what we're going to do is, you'll notice that in here, you'll get the small one goes right up against the hinge, just like that. And the other one goes just like this. Now, if you have the inverter with your lower plug-in point, we need to cut this corner off. So all we're going to do is mark where that is and cut straight across this line right here up against the hinge. So that way it's not in the way at all. So stay right there. I'm going to grab scissors and do a mark. Well, I can do it right here. So I'm going to mark. I'm going to push this tight up against my hinge, and I'm going to make a mark right there. Shows where I need to cut. And I'm just going to go, you can use a razor blade if you want. And you're going to go straight across here. And you're going to cut this little tab off. So that way we're good, just like that. So you can still open up your power outlet, plug in, and push the power outlet back into place. Okay? It's a little snug, but it is, everything still works perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a rag real quick. And what I like to do is take a little Windex and just wipe down the area before you peel and stick the mat on it. So that way it's got a good adhesion to the panel that you're putting it on. Okay, so now that it's clean, all we're gonna do is we're going to take the peel and stick off the edge. We're gonna have it tight against the hinge. That way you've got a little bit of gap down this line, and we're just going to set it into place. So I'm gonna get up here a little bit tighter. And we're gonna take this, and right here, it's 3M, so separate that. I don't go all the way with it just yet because I want to make sure that I don't have it drop out of my hand. So I'll go down to about right there, put a little crease on it, and it holds it. So you can set this in place, tight against the hinge, set it down and see that you've got a good gap all the way front to back, and then I'll hold it in place and I'll slowly pull that off and push that down. And this is all after cleaning the area with, you know, Windex or glass cleaner, something like that, and then go back over and push the mat down nice and snug. So now we're going to do the back piece here. I've already sprayed it. So again, we're going to take the first section. We're going to peel this off. And we're going to set this tight against the hinge. And see how it comes down. Got a little bit of gap right there where you can see the metal. We're going to pull this back. And that's perfect for the little pop panel. And all we're going to do is we're going to move over to the other side now and do the exact same. So, again, let's clean it off with a little bit of Windex. Gets any dirt, grime, fingerprint, oil, any of that off. And it makes it ready. So again, we're going to set this in place. We're going to go against the hinge. And if you want, there's a little bit of edge that maybe this sticks over. You can trim that if you want. But you want to keep about 1/8 of an inch off your tie-down rails. And you can see that matches with the bend in the metal below it. So I'm going to do this end because it's easier to see. A starting point. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to push it against my hinge. Make sure I'm at the edge. I'm going to set this down. Pretty good right there. So hold it. Peel a little bit more. Stick it. Peel a little bit more. Stick it. Push it. You see I got a little bit of gap around there. That's perfect. We don't want to go all the way up against the plastic with the metal, just because if there's any kind of movement, you know, you're not going to have any rubbing from the metal. So pull the rest of that off, drop that down into place, push on it. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with the small piece. That's going to go just like this. So again, take just a little piece, push it against the hinge, down into place. Check your gap back here, make sure you're good. So now we got the side panels on, so now the bigger panels, we'll get all this stuff off. We'll clean, we'll do the inside forward one first. We'll show you how to test fit it and set that all up with peeling just a little back first and putting that whole panel in place in just a second. Okay, now we're gonna put the rear panel on. And again, preset it in place. You'll notice that you want to have about, you know, 1/2 inch gap here. It's not going to be perfect with the sides because one side is shorter depth. Okay, so now when you're doing these two forward panels, the big ones, set the panel in place and see kind of like how you are with how close you are to the edge. You're about 1/4 inch all the way around. So what I do is I'll take this and I'll just do a peel up of about a couple inches, so that when I set this in place, I'll hold this end up, and I want to make sure that I've got side gap and everything about the same across the back and on the sides. And if I do, and I've about 1/4 inch up front, I'll set that down. I'll take the phone here so I can show you. So see how you've got the same gap all the way across. It's a little tighter on this side, but it's about 1/8 of an inch there. And maybe about 3/16 to 1/4 on this side. So it's up to you if you want to peel it off and get it again, get it a little bit more accurate. Totally up to you. I'm good with it as it is. So I am going to start pulling this. So I push down on the front so it holds it and it won't move. See, what this also does is it makes it about 1/8 of an inch from the end here, so it's tighter on the two panels together. I personally like that. So now you can lift up, reach under, and start peeling this back. And as you do, go side to side, pushing the mat down. So pull this out from underneath and push down to where you get it all the way out, and you've got no bubbles or creases in your large panel. And then push down on it all the way across to make sure it's all down nice and tight. Take something along the edge, like a screwdriver handle or something, just to kind of push those edges down, just to make sure they're nice and tight. So now we'll grab the other one. Then the other, because of the side panels. So what we care about is trying to be as close to matched up here, okay? So I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other one. A couple of inches. Crease the paper so you can pull it out easily from underneath and it stays in place. And what you're going to do is you're going to kind of eyeball it into place first. And you kind of look down your grooves on where you're at. You can see when you look right here, they look pretty good. Matchy matchy. So I'm going to push down on that, and you'll see here on the edge, we've got about 1/4 of an inch to the edge, so that's perfect. So I'm going to pull the peel and stick layer out. So pull it about halfway, pull towards you so you get good adhesion with the mat. Do it in, sections, like 1/3 at a time, so that way if you have to pull it back up, you can. Push down on the edges. All the way around. There's your full marine deck system. Marine mats all the way across the back end of your Grenadier drawer system.